The forces of nature weren't always the deities we know them as today. There was a time before that, a time before they were forced into their divinity. The people of Hisui called these four Pokemon Keshin, a word that comes from Japanese Buddhism. A Keshin is an avatar a deity takes on to interact with our world. But unlike true Keshin, who exist beyond attachment to the mortal realm, these four display volatile emotions and human egos. On top of that, each of them is assigned a specific gender, a rarity among deities as well as legendary Pokemon. Take a look at their other guys as well. These beast-like shapes are called their Therian forms, and they're based on one of the four symbols from Chinese mythology. The Azure Dragon of the East, the Vermilion Bird of the South, the White Tiger of the West, and the Black Tortoise of the North. Funnily enough, in Taoism, which is also the idea that Reshiram and Zekrom were based on, the four symbols actually had human identities and names assigned to them. But even knowing all of that, it still leaves us with the question of why would these divine beings hold such human-like qualities? In order for me to be able to explain that, I need you to first understand why the forces of nature change between their two forms in the first place. In the Alola region, we can find Professor Burnett, who's a known colleague to Professor Fennel, a researcher of dreams in the Unova region. She introduces us to a place called the Inter-Dream Zone, a dimension that lies, well, between dreams and reality. It's here that we can find the answers to our earlier question. Alongside Burnett, we discovered that the forces of nature have started to linger in the Inter-Dream Zone, with her also explaining to us that their prolonged existence here caused them to adapt to this environment, specifically their Therian forms, their deity-like state. But if that statement is true, then the inverse must also. Their incarnate forms must thus be an adaptation to the human world, or more specifically, an adaptation that formed due to their interaction with humankind. Despite being gods now, they feel the pull of what they once were, which explains why their godlike powers are limited in their incarnate forms. But is that enough evidence to prove that their incarnate states arose from human interaction? Not quite. So, for now, I'd like to ask you a question instead. When did we see the forces of nature interact with humanity before? Well, in quite a few locations actually, so let's start with the one furthest back in history. In the Pokemon Generations anime, we can learn of Landorus being found deep within the Relic Castle's ruins, something that makes quite a bit of sense when we combine this occurrence with its Pokédex entry. Lands visited by Landorus grant such bountiful crops that it has been hailed as the guardian of the fields. Hold on though, isn't Route 4 a desert? Yeah, but it wasn't always one. The lush and fertile Route 18's map description actually says that the present-day desert resort, the one found on Route 4, was once part of it. So, what happened here? Based on another legend in Unova, there was a civil war among all of the land's people. The reason for the conflict has never truly been stated, but it's very likely due to the distrust of Pokemon that developed after the original dragons split apart. The people's anger towards Pokemon presumably made Landorus and the rest of the quartet escape from Unova. It was also during this time that Landorus was said to bear humanoid shape. Up until recently, the location they left to was largely unexplained. But nowadays, we know they went to Hisui, traveling over the seas to do so. On top of that, per Tornadus' Pokédex entry, we can learn that they were in their Therian form while doing so. While we're on the topic of Hisui, I should probably talk about another relic of the past, the Reveal Glass, which before the release of Legends Arceus was thought to be complete. But it turns out the version we received in Unova had its handle ripped clean off. The reason for this rather late addition is due to its design incorporating elements from all four of the Kami Quartet. The left side is blue for Thundurus, the right side is green for Tornadus, and the upper side is orange for Landorus. Now, with the addition of the handle, we also get the pink for Enamorus. But the handle also wasn't found in any game since, so where do you think it disappeared to? If you'd like to take a crack at it, then consider leaving a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And hey, if you want to help support these theories, then consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. They might seem like small actions to some, but it's what allows me to continue putting my all into creating these videos. Thank you so much for your support. The idea of the Reveal Glass once again pulls us into East Asian mythology. There's a pretty common concept of humans, animals, and even plants cultivating the powers of the universe for thousands of years to become deities. These deities' previous identities can still be revealed, however, and that's usually done through the use of reflective surfaces such as a mirror. Applying this mythology's logic to our theory here, we can see a pretty clear overlap. The reveal glass's item description states that it reveals the truth by converting Pokemon back to their original shape. And if you remember what was said in Tornadus' Pokédex entry previously, the fact that the avian guise is his true form, then this all starts to become rather familiar. But even with the myth here answered, there is actually another question we completely forgot about. The reveal glass had its handle during the events of Legends of Arceus, but then later, in the future, in the Unovan games, it didn't anymore. That must mean that it was made here in Hisui instead. Around 2,500 years ago, during the time of the Unovan Civil War, the quartet arrived in Hisui, a land frozen and barren. Tornadus' winds and Thundurus' lightning first brought chaos, but their clash also nourished the earth. Landorus then descended to restore balance, and Enamorus melted the harsh winter into spring. In gratitude, the ancient Hisuians forged a mirror of truth. Much like the mirrors of Shinto and Taoist lore, it bridged heaven and earth, reflecting the force's true divine essence. The ancient people of Sinnoh creating the reverse glass also makes quite a bit of sense if you apply to it what we talked about earlier. Their connection to gods such as Arceus makes them the prime candidate to reveal the true form of the deities that saved them. It's also no wonder then that the Legends of Arceus Pokédex is the only one to record their Therian forms, as the people of Hisui saw them not as beasts, but as gods revealed through their glass. Okay, great. But why is the glass in Unova then? And why isn't Enamorus there alongside the other three? Thankfully, that can be explained by our player character's actions in Hisui. After they tamed all four of the beasts, they most likely held onto them until passing away. Enamorus then returned to Kogita, and the three other deities left back to the Unova region, taking alongside them the reveal glass and a group of devout followers that later formed a village on the side of Route 14. Within the village, we can discover the Abundant Shrine, something the settlers built as a way to honor Landorus for his aid in quelling Tornadus and Thundurus. The reason I presume this is the village that the settlers created is due to the people here being more than just familiar with Hisuian culture. There are the Bronzong and Himeko in the tall grass, which obviously hint towards Sinnohan roots, one being worshipped for rain and harvests, while the other is in the form of a bell that is commonly used to ward off bad spirits. Though those are probably the less effective pieces of evidence, as we can also find Vulpix and Ninetales around the Abundant Shrine, Pokemon that heavily resonate with Landorus itself, as its design is also based on the Inari Okami, the god of fertility and agriculture. The Inari Okami was not only revered in Japanese mythology, but it also used kitsune messengers, fox spirits, to transport messages to mortals. That also makes the fact that all four of the Kami Quartet have the same name in both Hisui and Unova make a lot of sense, as the colony in Unova obviously just stemmed from the one in Hisui, keeping their names identical. Now that we know all of this, we can answer the video's question: how did the forces of nature become the gods we know today? I'll take you through all the evidence we have gathered so far, and I'll try to explain it through all of that. Remember how I talked about Keshen being the avatar of a deity? Well, I'll need you to take a look at their incarnate forms once more. Their lower body is quite obviously a cloud. Why? Well, back in the Interdream Zone, we actually find these exact clouds swirling in the air. Thus, we can at least conclude that their creation has something to do with dreams. And where do we see dreams the most? Unova. It's a commonly discussed topic from even the beginning of the game, where you have to rescue Musharna and Muna. Another big element of Pokemon Black and White was the Entralink, and it's in this place that I want to point out the giant black and white upwards spiraling tree in the center of the region. The people that still live among the ruins of an old civilization here talk about being able to enter the world of dreams, as if the waking world and the dream world were once connected. By combining these two facts, we're at least able to pull some conclusions. What if the separation of dreams and reality occurred during the original Dragon Split, when Reshiram and Zekrom were created? And when this split happened, a large amount of energy must have been released, almost like a storm. Thankfully, the people back then must have been able to at least partially control dream energy. Maybe a group of dream wielders tried to contain the chaos that was growing in the center of the region in order to protect their people, but they overestimated their powers, their chi, the life force connecting affecting all things, aligned with the world's dharma, the law of nature that each now embodies. In a sense, dream energy is almost the exact same thing as chi, because as you can see with the Dream Eater, it consumes another Pokemon's HP while healing another. Thundurus became the storm of punishment, Tornadus the endless winds of change, Landorus the calm of restoration, and Enamorus the warmth of love and renewal. Just as the four symbols of Chinese myth guard the elements and directions, these four became guardians of the natural world, human emotion made divine.